Hello guys. Hello guys, welcome to the stream. If you're in the chats, let me know how it's going. Seems to be having some issues on my end here. So let me know how it's going for you guys. If you're in the chats. All right. Okay, so we're going to give it a few minutes and then we can start the stream. Tonight is just hanging out as usual. So whilst we're all stuck at home during quarantine for this corona situation, I'll be doing a series of these maybe once a week. Trying to figure out which day works best, but for now we'll leave it at Wednesdays. And the goal for this series is to hang out and edit together as a group. So for each one of the episodes, I'll be sharing with you guys the raw images that I have shot, and we can all take a look, go through them, and edit them. So I might share more than one image, but depending on the time that we have, we'll take a look, and how fast we move with the edits, we'll take a look and see how many we can edit at a time or during the stream. So I may edit one or two images. I may only end up editing just one. And this is a group edit, so don't forget to share your own ideas as I go through the edit process as well. It's a team effort. We're all trying to stay active during this corona situation, so let's all edit together. And if you're in the chats, you can go into the comment section, and I have left a link in there to download the images that we're using for this video today, for this stream. So you can download those images, and if you are not busy, you can follow along and edit those images with us. All right, so giving it a few minutes to see if a few more people will join, and then we can get started. And today we're editing a group of images that I shot a while back using the Panasonic S1H. And if you look in the description as well, I've left a link to that behind the scenes of that shoot. So you may want to take a look at that behind the scenes as well. And then we're going to take a look at some of the images we shot during that episode of the behind the scenes and go through the edit of those as well. So whilst you're waiting, I'm going to jump quickly into Lightroom, and then we can take a look and see what we have as we go through this. All right, so here we are in Lightroom, and as you can see, this is the image that we have to edit. It's not just one image today, so if I open up the catalog right here, I have shared 5 images, so you can choose whichever one of those 5 that you want to edit today, and then we can take a look at those, and then you can pick one and just edit it. So follow along as we go. Depending on the image that you pick, you may want to edit a little bit differently, but that's all the whole point of the situation. Everybody take an image, edit it the way you want, and at the end of the show, or after you finish editing, whenever you finish editing, you can share that image on social media, and don't forget to tag me on it. My social media links are in the description as well as on my channel, so take a look, and then you can post it out there. Show me what you managed to come up with from this session, or what you're able to do with the images that I provided. Okay, just giving it one more second. We're gonna get started. But I'm going to go ahead and just share. Give me just one quick second. Guys, let me know how the audio is coming for you if you're in the chats. Okay. So let's go ahead and start editing. All right, so here we go. We have 5 images. Let me put them in a grid. And we're going to choose one of them to edit. So for me, I'm going to take, I think I'm going to pick this third one for the first image to edit. So I'm going to pick that one. One quick second, guys. Okay, so here we go. Let's start editing. I'm going to take this image right here, and this is what we're going to edit for the day. So I'm going in. I'm going to start with this. And for this image, it was a backlit shot, as you can see. So the contrast is a little low. So what I'm going to do is go into the Develop tab. And for this image, I just want to go with a high key look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually bring up the shadows, the highlights, sorry, a little bit more. All right. And I'm going to take the whites, hold down shift, see where my whites are. I think they're good. I'll leave it at that point. Or maybe bring it down a little more, but yeah, it's okay because I'm going for a high key look, so not really concerned about blowing out the whites. And I'm going to take my dehaze tool. I'm going to bring it down a little bit, maybe up to about 10. And you got to take care, because when you bring down the dehaze, what it does is it's kind of takes away a little bit of the contrast as well. So as you can see, but we're going for a high key look, so let's go ahead and just keep. For vibrance, I'm going to take maybe add a little bit more vibrance, maybe about 10. And my shadows, I'm going to bring up a bit, not too much, but just a little bit. And now as you can see, the image looks a little bit washed out. So to counteract the washed out piece, what I'm going to do is to take my blacks and I'm going to adjust the black points a little bit. So let's hold down Alt whilst pulling the blacks down. And let's see where this point gets us. And as you can see, we've brought back in a little bit more of the contrast. So if you look at this, this is where the whites were by default. And by bringing the whites down to about 45, 50, we've improved the overall contrast of the image. So that's all. This is what we've done so far. I went in here from this to that. And guys, if you're in the chats, let me know how the audio sounds. If the audio is good and if the stream is coming great for you as well. If not, leave me a comment, let me know. So basically what I'm trying to do is go for a little bit of a high key look with this shot. And we started off from this. This is what we've done so far with the little adjustments that we've done. If you want to follow along, guys, like I said, the links to the image, the raw files is in the description. You can download them and follow along. This image was shot on the Panasonic S1H with the 50mm f1.4 lens at f1.4. So if I bring up the info, you can see here, this was shot at 500 of a second at f1.4 ISO 100 on a Lumix 50mm f1.4 with the Panasonic S1H. So there we go, and we're going through this edit. So I brought my dehaze down, I bumped up a little bit of vibrance, and I used the contrast, I used the blacks to bring in a little bit of contrast. Now I'm going to take my contrast slider, and let's see what we can do with the contrast slider. I'm probably going to leave this around 15, they're about 15, 17, that's good. If you zoom in, this image is a little bit out of focus. As you can see, the focus was on the eye that is further away from the camera instead of being on this eye right here that is closest to the camera, but that's okay. We're just gonna play with it. But normally you want to make sure that when you're focusing on the eye that is closest to the camera, right? So that you get the sharpest looking image as much as possible. But here we go. So I've done basic adjustments in here, but I still see a little bit of dark colors around here. So there's a couple of ways we can get rid of that. First off, let's go to the lens correction tab and see what we can do here. I'm going to enable lens correction and nothing is going on. Let's see, I think Lightroom doesn't have the profile for the S1H and this lens yet, but let me see if by going manual I can find the profile for this. And I can't even see Panasonic in here, so that's fine. So we're not going to go with that lens correction, but we're going to correct that little bit of darkness right shade right here, because we're looking for a high key image. So to do that, I'm going to take the graduated filter tool right here, and with the graduated filter tool selected, first off, let me just hold down Alt and hit reset. And what I want to do is I'm going to drag a little filter from the left hand side of the image to the right hand side. And so with the filter there, I'm just going to play around and take my exposure up just slightly. It doesn't really matter because we're looking for a high key look. So I'm going to bring my exposure up till I can see that it blends in properly. All right, so as you can see, that piece there is gone. And if I do before and after, you can see that little shadow on that left hand side. And if I do the after, you can see how that shadow is gone. So now we have pure white across the board. And that's it. So now I can see that the subject is still a little bit darker and I want to brighten up her face a little bit more, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the radar filter tool and I'm going to come in here around the face and I'm going to draw a little circle somewhere here. And if I try to adjust the exposure, As you can see, it's affecting everything outside of that circle. So to fix that, we're going to go with invert. And what invert does is that it inverts where the effect is taking place. So in this case, when we try to make any adjustments, it now affects inside of the circle, not outside. Okay, so with that set, what I want to do is bring up the shadows a little bit. That's too much. So maybe somewhere around 15, it's good. And the next thing I want to do is maybe bump up a little bit of more contrast just into that selected area. Okay, and that's about it. So what we've done so far, just to recap, is we brought the image into Lightroom and I did a little bit of adjustments, and all adjustments that I have done so far is right now just on the basic tab. As you can see here, we're just on the basic tab. So what I've done is adjusted my contrast, my highlights, the shadows. I left the whites where they were. I brought down the blacks. And that's what we've got so far. So let's take a look at our before and after. This is where we started off with the image, right out of camera. And this is where we've brought it up to with the basic adjustments that we have done so far. Right? And that's good. But now I want to take this into Photoshop and do a little bit more on this. So this is good as it is. Nothing much really to be done in Photoshop, except that I personally like to do my color grading in Photoshop, especially when I am not editing wedding photos. So if I'm editing wedding photos, then I don't really do anything in Photoshop. I try to do everything right here in Lightroom, because that's a lot of images to edit. And if you want to take each one of them into Photoshop and process it, that's a lot of hours you're going to be spending on that. So for wedding image, unless there is something critical that needs to be fixed in Photoshop, I try to finish everything off right in Lightroom. But for this one, I'm going to take this and we're going to take it into Photoshop and see what we can do to complete it. So I'm going to take, right click and go edit. And I'm going to open this in Photoshop 2020 CC. All right, let's give it a second for Photoshop to load. Sorry guys, I'm streaming on my laptop, so it's a little bit slower than usual. Let's give it a little bit of time. Photoshop's going to open up. Okay, so here we go. We are in Photoshop waiting for the image to open up. So here we go with the image opened in Photoshop. And now that we have this image in Photoshop, the first thing I always do in Photoshop is to do a Command J just to duplicate the layer. And sometimes I also go in and I add what we call, I add a curves adjustment. And what I use the curve adjustments for at this stage is just to take a look at my image and see if there is any color cast that I need to fix. So I will go in and I will just look at one of these two options. And if you hover over it, it will tell you what this option does. So this one is to auto color. And then the second one is to alter color cast. So I usually use enhanced per channel contrast. And as you can see, that has improved the contrast of the image right there. So this is our before and this is the after. I typically do this if I feel like the image has a color cast to it and I want to correct it. It also helps to pop a little bit. So as you can see, it's done a good job and it's taking out, you know, some of the halos around the hair and has brought in a little more contrast into her face. And that's good. For this image, I really don't want to do much to it because it's good as it is. And the image to begin with was soft. So there's not too much of skin details or any blemishes on the skin. But if you want to go ahead and do something, let me just do a stamp visible layer, Command Shift Alt and E. And on this layer here, I just want to fix a little bit of these small blemishes, right? Just as a demonstration. So to do that, you can take your clone stamp tool, which is, well, not the clone stamp. I'm not going to use the patch tool. I'm going to use the healing brush tool. Sometimes you can use the spot healing brush, but sometimes I've realized that the spot healing brush kind of creates blemishes. But for this image, it looks like it's doing a good job. So all you do is just, with the spot healing brush, is just paint over where you think there's a blemish that you want to remove. And so as I paint over some of these spots, you can see that, right, so for here, for example, you can see the spot healing brush is smearing the place. So I'm going to do undo. And in such situations, your best bet will be the healing brush tool, the regular healing brush tool, because what that allows you to do is to sample a spot where you want. So for this, I'm going to sample somewhere very close to it, and I'm going to paint over it, right? So and let's do the same over here with this little pimple. As you can see, sample and dab, sample and dab. Wait, let's take a look here. Sample and dab, sample and dab, sample and dab. So that's about it. Nothing really much to do with this. You can, depending on your taste, as you can see, these are the before, this is the after, and you can see the little spots that we just brushed over and removed. All right, so those they are, and that's it. So with this done, and I want to take a look and maybe see if I can do a little bit of color tone for the skin. So I'm going to do another stamp visible layer, Control Shift Alt and E. And for this layer, I'm going to go to Filter and Camera Raw Filter. And what this is going to do is basically just take us into Camera Raw, which is Lightroom. And I'm going to turn off this highlight stone because this is a high key image, so I don't really care about the highlights being blown. And I want to go into the calibration tab right here. And I want to play with the primary colors. So I'm going to take this blue slider. And as you can see, as I bring it down, look at the effect on her skin, right? So I'm more concerned about her skin tone. And I'm going to bring this down, let's say 20 for now. Let's see, and then let's play with the reds a little bit to balance things out. I'm gonna bring the reds maybe around 10. And so here we go. This is just a basic grade for me because I just wanted to make the skin tones look a little bit as natural as possible. So just with that, I think I'm good with the skin tones, but let's play around a little bit, see. Yeah, I think I'm gonna leave it right here. Go okay. Let it render in Photoshop, and now you can see. So this was before we took it into Photoshop. Before we took it into Camera Raw to do the skin tone adjustments or the adjustments of the primary colors. And this is what we've come up with. So as you can see, it's affecting even her dress. And if you don't want this tone to affect the dress, then what you do is once you bring it back into Photoshop, you can put a mask on it. So hold down the Alt key and put oops, laptop battery is about to die. Okay, so let's keep going. I don't think I have my charger here with me, which is very bad. Okay, but here we go. Here I have a filter on it, and with this filter that I put on it, it's actually hiding the whole effect. So if I turn the filter off, then you can see, but what I want to do is invert this filter, right? So go Control I, and now we have the effect applied everywhere. So what I'm going to do is on this mask here, I'm going to take the brush tool and use the arrow keys, the bracket, left and right bracket 2 keys to make the brush bigger or smaller. And what I want to do is I'm going to take the effect away from her clothes and part of her hair. So I'm going to come here and do an X to swap the color. So we have black as the foreground. And I'm going to paint with black up in the areas where I don't want the effect to be applied. So I'm going to paint up, make the brush a little bit more bigger, paint up in her hair. Right, I'm going to paint up a little bit away from her clothes as well. All right, so this is where we are. And as you can see, it's only affecting the skin, right? And not the clothes or the hair. And if you feel that the intensity of the effect is too much on her skin, then you can bring your opacity down, right? And adjust to your taste. So that's it for this image. Let me quickly see if we can edit one more image. So now that we're done, let's just close this, go yes, and head back into Lightroom. And so here we are. This is the image before we went into Lightroom. And this is the image, this is the image before we went into Photoshop. And this is the image that we've brought back into Lightroom with a little minor adjustments with it in Photoshop. Okay, so we're gonna do the second image. For our second image, let me quickly see if I can switch before this laptop dies. Just a quick second, guys. Right here. Sorry, guys. Just a quick second. I want to make sure we don't get cut out. Okay, so for the second image, we're gonna start editing that. Instead of going editing in Lightroom, we're gonna start editing that one in Camera Raw straight away. So I have a folder open here. I'm going to take a look, and these are the same 5 images. And for this edit, I'm going to pick, let's say, this image here. So what I'm going to do is double click, or let's say right click, and I'm going to open with, choose an app. Let's go Photoshop. Where are you? Okay, so we're going to edit that with Photoshop. And so we're going to go inside of Photoshop, Camera Raw. And let's do a few minor adjustments here in Camera Raw. This is just a simple headshot. So I'm going to bring out the shadows a little bit for this. I think the exposure is okay. I'm not going to adjust the exposure that much, but I just want to bring up the shadows just a tad bit. And I'm going to leave the contrast as it is. I'm going to hold down Alt and check the black levels. So maybe right here around 7. And I'm going to bring out maybe the contrast, no, but I'm going to bring down clarity, maybe just, well, I'll leave clarity as it is because I'm going to take this into Photoshop. So I'll leave clarity where it is, and I'm going to bring this in about 10 for the vibrance. Now let's take a look at the sharpening, and I'm going to do just some basic sharpening because this is for the input sharpening. And while I was in Photoshop, I might sharpen this again in Photoshop. So let's hold down the masking key. think right about here it's fine, because we want the sharpening just to affect the edges and not everything. And I'm going to bring this up to about 70. Right, so as I go down on the amount, you can see, and then as I bring it up, you can see the effects of the sharpening just around the eyes, and that's what we want. So that's good. That's just the basic stuff that I'm going to do here in Camera Raw. And with all of that done, I'm just going to go open image to bring that into Photoshop. Okay, so here we are. I've brought that into Photoshop. All right, so now that we're in Photoshop, as usual, we want to duplicate our layer to get started. So I'm going to do Command J just to duplicate the layer that we brought in. And on this first layer here, I'm going to do what I call the cleanup. So cleanup is basically fixing some of the blemishes on the skin tone and stuff like that. So the first thing to do is take your healing brush tool. Make sure the brush size is enough to cover the spot that you want to heal, but not too large. And I'm going to sample from a clean area around that spot and just dab. So there's sometimes I do it this way. Sometimes too I use frequency separation to get the cleanup done. The reason why I sometimes use frequency separation is because it allows you to separate the texture from the color, and so makes for a more cleaner healing process when you use the healing brush. So here we go. Right, so this is what we've done so far from that to that. So all those little black spots we've taken care of. I'm gonna go down here, sample an area close by and use that right there. Okay, so I think this is enough for now. I might do a little bit more healing once we get to frequency separation, but this is good for now. So this is before, this is after, before, after, right? So that's good. The next thing for me to do is, as usual, do my check, which I do with the curves. And I go in here and I do auto options, find light and dark, right? This one makes the image a little bit too greenish, so I'm going to use that, the auto color. Go OK. And this is before and after. As you can see, it's fixed the color tones and adjusted the white balance as well. If this is too much for you, you can bring down the opacity and blend it in a little bit more. Right, so somewhere around here, I think it's fine for me. So that's the before, that's our after. Now that that is done, I'm going to do a stamp visible layer, which is Control, Shift, Alt, and E. Which just basically just copies all these layers that you have underneath and stamps them at the top. Right, makes it one. So basically, just before we go ahead, this is where we started from. This is where we are right now. This is where we started from. This is where we are. All right, so now I'm gonna try to soften up the skin a little bit. And to do that, there's so many ways. So most people will do frequency separation, and I do frequency separation as well. In this case, we're gonna do frequency separation, but sometimes I do what I call the 1 minute quick edit or the quick skin softening. And if you want to know how to do that, I have a video in my channel on doing 1 minute skin smoothing. So you can take a look at that video. But what it does is, instead of going through the tedious process of instead of going through this tedious process of frequency separation, I combine a whole bunch of steps and just paint with a brush at the end. But so you can take that and look at that one on my channel as well. But in this case, we're going to do a proper frequency separation. So I'm going to make another duplicate of this layer. Command J. I'm going to name this one low frequency, LF. And I'm going to name this second layer high frequency. I'm going to take those two layers and I'll put them in a group with Control G. And I will name this FS for frequency separation. And with this, I'm going to turn off the HF layer and I'm just left with the LF. And what I'm going to do on this layer is go up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and with the Gaussian Blur dialog box, I'm going to go in here, take a look, maybe somewhere around here, because that's where we had most of the black skin blemishes that we removed. So the purpose of this is, as you can see all the texture in there, right? So you want to bring your radius all the way and keep blurring it until you don't really see much of the textures or the texture. So for this image, I'm probably going to go somewhere around 14. That's good. The whole idea is to blur it in such a way that you can still see the outlines of the, let me just undo that. So I want to blur it so that we can see, right here, we can see that the eyes and stuff are still there, but just, you know, blurring out the blemishes just a little bit. So that's fine, and I'll go okay. And as you can see, now everything is blurred. So what we're going to do is now turn on the high frequency layer. And with this high frequency layer turned on, what I want to do is go into the menus, go to image. We're going to do apply image. And we're going to go the high frequency. And over here, we're going to do subtract right down here. And we're going to leave our scale at 2 and our offset at 128. Just like that. And then go okay. Now everything is gray. We can see nothing, but that's fine. Take your high frequency layer, go to the blending options and set it to linear light. So if you're seeing the same thing I'm seeing right now, it means we did something wrong, right? So let's go over, let me remove this and let's do it again. Because after you do the frequency separation, there shouldn't be any difference between this layer and your original image. So let's go over it, see what we did wrong. Let's make a duplicate of this layer with Control J. Low frequency, I'm going to do it quickly. High frequency. And this one is LF. Okay, so this one, take this one, go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. I'm gonna leave this around 14. That's fine. Go okay. Now let's take that. Oh, yeah, we blur 14. Let's take this. Let's do image. Apply image. We're gonna subtract, and we don't want the merge. We want to subtract the low frequency from the high frequency. There we go. So that's what we messed up the first time. Now let's go okay, and then we're gonna take the options here and we're gonna go linear light. Now let's take these two, group them, and let's do FS for frequency separation. So as you can see now, if I turn up this layer, there is no difference between before and afters. And that's because what this layer is doing is that it's taking our whole image and it's splitting it into low frequencies, which is just the color data, and the high frequency, which is the blemishes or the textures. All right, so with that done, let's take our low frequency, or let's start with a high frequency for now. Let's zoom in. I want to take a look at the skin, and let's say you don't like these textures at the top here. Then all you do is take your spot healing brush tool, your healing brush tool, and now you can sample from another area here and paint over it. And because we separated the frequencies, you're going to see that the color data doesn't change. It's just the texture that we are copying over, right? So as I copy or as I sample and dab, you can see the texture changing, but the color data is still the same. That's why I was saying in the first edit that we can use this to also do the cleanup of the bigger blemishes. However, I sometimes don't use it. So here we go. As you can see, we are cleaning out the skin a little bit, and because we are doing a live edit, as you can see, I'm just going really fast, but you can take your time and get it done as cleanly as possible, right? And get a better results from what I'm getting. But I don't want this live stream to be 3 hours long, so I'm doing this quickly. Just copying skin texture from one area close by and just painting it over, right? Copy from here, and I'm just jumping all over because I don't want to spend too much time on this image right now on this stream. But if you're editing at home, you can take your time and you can do a lot, right? And have it done properly and cleanly. So as you can see, I'm sampling from really close to the area where I want to paint, because it doesn't make sense to go sample from here and paint over there. In most situations, you don't want to do that. So I'm just sampling from right around the same area and painting over, just evening out the skin texture as much as possible. Now, in a high-end retouching scenario, you could spend 2 hours on this image, but we're not doing a high-end retouching in this video. We just want to get something nice that we can post on Instagram, so we're not gonna spend too much time on that. As you can see here, this flyaway hair, I can get away with it by just sampling and painting skin tone over it. Right, there we go. This hair right here, sample over it a little bit. And by the way, if you have a large area that you want to do, you can use the patch tool for that as well. I try to stay away from it, but if you take the patch tool, you can do something similar. You can just and drag, right? But I don't really like to go that way. I like to do it, you know, with the spot healing brush. You can just do something like that. You can do something like that. Drag, drag, right? You can do, let's see, right here, we can do something like this. Little tiny bump, right? So, I mean, if you have time, you can go ahead and take your time and do this and get a clean result. But if I turn up this FS layer, this is what we had. This is what we've done so far. All right. So this is the before, and this is our after. Right. Before and after. Okay. So with that done, let me take a look. I think we're good. So don't forget that even though we're using this frequency separation layer for the skin, you could also technically use it for stuff like this clothes. If you want to take away these wrinkles and stuff, then all you do is select your high frequency layer, same way, come in here, and you could patch it, right? But in this scenario, it's more of a color data, so it's not gonna work that well on this right now. So now that we've finished with the high frequency layer, let's take a look at our low frequency layer. So for the low frequency layer, basically the same thing, but I'm going to take the lasso tool. I'm going to make sure you have a good feathering here. 20 to 25 or 30 pixels is good. I'm going to use 25 pixel feathering. And what you do is select the skin. I'm going to try to stay a little bit away from the edges. So I'm going to select the skin. Try to select skin that looks similar in terms of tones and texture. And I'm going to select this. And what we do is go to the filter. And you want to do blur, Gaussian blur. And you want to go up a little bit and take a look. See that? So for this image, we did the frequency at 14. I'm going to go maybe somewhere around here, 19, 20, between 20, 24. Right? Try not to go too far, because if you go too far, see what happens, right? It's going to mess up the skin. So you don't want to go too far. I'm going to stay somewhere around here. That looks okay to me. Go okay. Then you go ahead and you select the next area that looks similar. I'm going to select this patch right here. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and see what looks for that good for that particular area. Right? Technically, you could use the same value for everything, but I like to play around to see what looks good where. And I'm going to go okay. I'm going to select the area right here. Right? I'm going to do filter, blur, Gaussian blur. See, 24 maybe. Play around with it. 22. Yeah, I like that. I'll say okay. I'm going to do the similar thing right here, and I'll probably use the same value for that. So instead of going through and doing that again, I'll just do Gaussian blur here, which applies the last filter values that you did. I'm going to select the area around the chin right here. Oops, too much. I'm going to select right here, come down. As you can see, I'm staying away from areas that needs to be sharp, like the lips, the eyes. I'm staying away from those because you don't want to blur out those areas. I'm going to go Gaussian blur. And yeah, I think 22 is good. So what this is doing basically is, like, as you can see, is blending the skin tones, the skin color a lot more better, right? So it's taking an average sampling of the whole skin area where we have selected, and it's blending it in and making those colors of the skin match properly, right? So that's all we're doing. So let's go. This is our before, right? And this is our after with the frequency separation. And I try not to go too much. You can go ahead. Sometimes people do frequency separations and they make the skin look like plastic. I don't like that. I still like to maintain a little bit more of the natural look of the skin, instead of just blurring out everything and making the skin look fake and plasticky. I just do just a little bit of touch to it just to make the image look good, not go crazy with it, right? So it's up to you and your taste. If you want to go crazy with it, you can go crazy with it. I just like to do subtle skin smoothing or skin softening. So this is where this is where we've gotten to. And our frequency separation is okay. I will leave this as is. This is where we were. This is where we at. And for me, this is good enough. If you want more, you can go ahead and do more of it. You can actually even do multiple layers of frequency separation, right? So on top of this, if you want to do another set of frequency separation, you can do a stamp visible layer again. Control Alt Shift and E to get another stamp visible layer created, right? And then with this new stamp visible layer, you can go ahead through the process and do another set of frequency separation and go through the steps again till you're satisfied, right? Sometimes I split it into multiples as well. One for just the cleanup, one for the skin, stuff like that. So it's all your choice. You can do multiple stuff however you want it, but I like to leave a little bit of natural to it. So sometimes I actually even come down and take the opacity of the whole. Let me delete this layer, I don't need it. Just take the whole opacity of the whole frequency separation and adjust it with the opacity, right? So as you can see, if I bring it down, no frequency separation is applied to the skin, and I can bring it up, and maybe leave it somewhere around 85, 90, right? And then have a little bit of the blemishes peep through, right? So before and after, it's still there, but I don't want to go too crazy with it. All right, so now that I have the frequency separation done, for this image, I want to do a little bit of dodge and bend, and I'm not going to do micro dodge and bend. Yep. I'm just going to do a little bit of global dodge and bend just to bring out some of the, and highlight some of the facial features. The way I'm going to do that is to take a curves layer. And for this curves layer, I'm going to bring my highlights maybe up somewhere around here. And with that, I'm gonna take the mask and I'll do Control I to invert the mask. So nothing is applied yet. And I'm gonna name this one Dodge. Then I'll do another curves adjustment layer and I'll bring it down the opposite way. Same thing, I will do Control I to invert that mask. And this will be my Dodge bend layer. So I'll take these two, I'll group them, and I'll name this group D and B for Dodge and bend. So open up the Dodge and bend layer. I want to take my brush tool, make sure that my foreground color is white. If it's not, you can use the X key to toggle between black and white for the foreground and background. If one of the colors is not black or white, then you can use the D key to reset everything to default. All right. And now that we have these two layers, our Dodge layer will make wherever we paint brighter. Our bend layer will make wherever we paint darker. Now I'm going to go to my opacity and I'm going to bring my opacity down to, let's say, maybe 2%. And I'm going to bring my flow down, down, down. Maybe I'll bring my opacity be up to maybe 5. My flow, maybe bring it up to about 2 or 3. The reason why I'm doing that is so that I have more control over my painting. Your flow is basically how much paint is laid down when you paint. So if my flow is at 100%, it means that if I go in here, just one stroke and I'm at full paint out of it. But the opacity controls how much of the paint you can actually lay down. So if I keep painting and I keep painting, if my opacity is up at 100, right, then I can take my flow down to maybe, let's say, 10%. Then what it means is that I can go all the way to 100% of the paint, the darkness or the texture of the color of the paint. However, because my flow is at 10, then maybe I need about 10 strokes, right, to lay down the full paint. This allows you to paint in what may probably, I would say, layers, right? So as you paint slowly, let me just do something. So as I paint white here, as you can see, the more I paint, the more white it gets, and that's your flow at work, right? So if I do Control Z, I should have created a new layer for that demonstration, but that's fine, right? This is D and D. So now I want to take my Dodge layer, and on the Dodge layer I'm going to paint with black. So I have black as my fore color, and what I want to do is I want to highlight or paint around her face. So I'm going to go in here around the hair here. I'm going to paint. I still left my opacity as 100, but that's fine for now. Oh, I have to paint with white. That's what we want. We want on the band. Yeah, so paint with white on the band layer. And as we paint, you can see that the area we are painting is getting darker. So I just want to trace her face. And I'll show you a little bit of the before and after in a minute. I'm gonna reduce the brush size. I'm gonna go through this little dark line right here. Small lines. I want to highlight those. Those were dark to begin with, a little bit darker, right? I'm gonna go over here along the nose line. The eyebrow, I'm gonna darken up a little bit more. Stacking up this eyebrow. I'm going to go over the eyelids just a little bit. Bottom here. So if I go before and after, you can see what we've done. This is too much, right? But I did that on purpose, and I'll show you guys how to deal with that in a minute, right? But you can see that it's really giving the face some sort of form, right? So this is before. The face looked a little bit, you know, with no dimensions to it because we did this figure separations. But now with this, there's a little bit more dimension to the face. But this is too much. So what I do at this point is I'll take my opacity of that layer and just bring it down, right? So I'm going to take my opacity down to maybe around, let's say 30% and see. So we're around 30% of opacity, and you can see subtle change, right? Not as drastic as when we had it at 100%. Maybe I'll try 40 to see. Right? Yeah, I like 40. So I'll keep this at 40. You can go ahead and keep doing it. So we did the face. We did a little bit of that. I think for this image, that's pretty good. I'm not going to do too much of that. Right? Just wanted to highlight some of her facial features. I'm going to make the brush a little bit darker, and I'm go on the cheeks a little bit. Now you can take your dodge layer, and on the dodge layer, similar thing, similar process. So you're going to paint around somewhere here where there's already highlights. You don't want to paint on the areas that are black or darker already on the shadows. So I'm going to paint a little bit on the highlights. If you think you've painted too much, just do your black and erase some of it. All right, you can do that. Maybe somewhere around here where there's a little bit of highlights. I'm going to reduce the brush size, go on the highlights of the lips. If it's too much, do an X for black paint and paint black a little bit on it. All right. So we just trying to contour the face a little bit more. I'm gonna go maybe around here on the eyelids right there. Right. Let's just go paint. So if we take a look, this is what we've done so far. I'm gonna maybe a little bit down here too. Right, this is what we've done. Now I'm going to take that layer as well. I'm going to bring it down to somewhere around here. Right, and I think we're good with that. So now if you take a look, this is before our dodge and bend, and this is our dodge and bend layer applied. And you can see there's more dimension to the nose, to the cheeks, to the jawbone. All right, and this is just quick edit, so you can take your time, play around with this and do it and apply it more better. I mean, to get a better results out of it. But we're doing quick edits here, so that's good. So that's what we've done with our dodge and bend layer. That's good. Now the next thing I want to do, and still with a dodge and bend layer, is that sometimes when you paint the dodge and bend layers, you will end up having some of the spillovers from the highlights into the shadows and stuff like that, right? So to fix that, you can use a blend if to blend in your paintings a little bit more better. So if I take the bend layer, for example, and I right click on this side, I'm going to get this dialog box pop up, and this is your blend ifs is at the bottom here, right? on the layer styles dialog box. So if I go through this, all I have to do is take a look at this layer, and I want to blend it with the underlying layer, right? So if I take this and I want the underlying layer, as I move this, you can see that all the black is getting moved, all right? But that's not what we want. We want this to affect the blacks because this is the bent layer. Rather, I want to take that away from anywhere that was not a shadow before, right? So as you can see, as I bring it down, you can see around the cheeks right here, the effect that this is having. So I can go like that all the way up here. And somewhere around here, it's good. But the effect is a little bit harsh. So what you can do is hold down the Alt key and split these two to add a little bit of feather to it. So if I do a preview, you can see what band layer was affecting before and now what is affecting with that. So there's a little bit of change, but it makes a little bit more better blending. And we'll do the same thing on the dodge layer, but on the dodge layer we're gonna go the opposite direction, right? Because we want to take it away from the darker areas. So we're gonna go maybe up to somewhere here, hold down the Alt key and give it a little bit more of feather, and we're good. So this is it, before and after. Blends it in a little bit more better before and after. Good blending. And overall dodge and bend, right? If you feel some of these are too much, for example the bend, I can see a little bit too much here, then you can just take your brush and paint black, right? Just to reduce some of those if you feel it's overkill in certain spots, right? So you can go. All right, so that's it for this one, for the dodge and bend. If you want to sharpen, you can sharpen this again. So what I'll do is I'll create a stamp visible layer, Control Alt Shift and E, and I'm going to take this back into Camera Raw filter. And I'm going to adjust this. So hold down go to the details tab. Let's take the mask, bring it up a little bit, right? Somewhere right around here. Yep, around 58 is good. And then we're gonna zoom in a little bit so we can see what we're doing around the eyes. Let me go down to maybe 100%. I want to see what I'm doing around the eye, right? And then take my amount and start bringing it up just a little. You don't want too much of it, so somewhere around 55 I think it's good for this image, right? And so I'll go okay, and we're done. And if I zoom in here and take a look, this is before and after for the sharpening, and you can see the eyes popping up a little bit more, right? So that's where we're at with this image. Let me zoom out and let's see where we are. So that's it. This is where we are. All right, and I'm gonna take this image and now I want to crop it for Instagram, right? So the challenge is that Instagram crop, right? So let's go and take a look at that Instagram crop. So for the Instagram crop, I'm going to take the crop tool and let me just clear everything here. And here we want to take a ratio. let's pick this 4:5 ratio, which is what Instagram is, 4:5. I mean for the portrait size, right? So if this was landscape, then you could probably use that to switch and go into landscape if you want to go a landscape crop, right? That's too tight for me, so I'm going to stick with the portrait crop. On an Instagrams, yep, 4:5. So we're cutting down a little bit at the bottom here, but that's fine. Right. Yeah, I'll take that crop. And there we go. So this can be a profile picture, an Instagram post, something like that, right? Very basic, simple headshot edit with a little bit of frequency separation to smooth out the skin. So this is where we were when we brought it into Photoshop. And this is the final results. Right. I have a question on Facebook that says, in the chat, says, if you have to edit the necklace out, what would be the easiest and most effective tool? So if I have to edit the necklace out, it could be a combination of multiple tools. Let's try that now quickly. So I'll do a stamp visible layer, Control Alt Option and E. And if I have to edit the necklace out, I'm going to zoom in here. And what I could do is use the patch tool. And I'm going to try to do a quick selection right here. Drag it up just a touch. Let's see. Let's go. We might have to use a couple of tools, like I said, or techniques. Let's see how this works. All right, try to match up. We can take that. Let's try that. So as you can see, it's not working really well with the patch tool, but let's see. Let's keep it going for a little bit. So we've removed the necklace, but doesn't look clean, right? So with that done, I'm gonna go over and now switch to this tool right here, and I'm gonna sample and try to fix. And mind you, you could also try using the content aware fill too for this. Right, so we're coming along. This is where we were, this is where we're at now. Still not the cleanest of jobs. We could try and keep going. I would typically just take that, do a brush tool, take my eyedropper, and what I'll do from here is sample a color of the skin. Right, sample a color of the skin around that same area, and paint over it. Sample and paint, sample and paint, out to sample. Right. It's always best to shoot if you feel something is not good. It's always best to take it out during the shoot than to try to fix it in Photoshop. But if you have to, yes, you can work with it. You can work around it and get something done. So, I mean, if we're taking our time to do this, we can edit this cleanly. But for a quick patch work on a live stream, this is probably where I will go. Right. Yep, you can use a bunch of tools. You can use the clone stamp tool as well. You can use the patch tool. But most of the time you would have to use a combination of multiple tools and techniques to get this done. Right, so that's where we're at. That's where we brought it to. Right there. This was just, by the way, wasn't part of our edit tutorial for today, but the question was asked, so I'll try to answer it. All right, so I can just get rid of those two and we're back to where we are with the image. If you have to remove something, yes, you can actually just remove that and edit it out. So try to always shoot the way you want the image to look instead of trying to manipulate most of the time in Photoshop. Hope that answers the question. All right, guys, so excuse me, there's no more questions in the chat. I think that was it. So I'm going to take it over here and end this stream. Thank you guys for spending the night with me whilst you're in quarantine. I hope we learned something from this shoot. From this edit today. And go check out the behind the scenes of the edit. How we shot this image right here. The behind the scenes on my channel as well. So look for it in the link in the description below, and take a look at how we shot this image in the studio with natural light as well. All right, guys. So thank you for watching. We could keep going with this image. It's not my final edit yet, but for the sake of time, this is where we will go. So take this image, go into your own editing software of choice, edit it, and share your final edits on social media, Facebook, YouTube, and tag me in it. Right? I like to see what you do with these images. Like I said, editing and photography is subjective. Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, so it's up to you and your style of edit. So take the images, put your spin on it, and share it, and let's see what you get. All right, some guys, thank you for hanging out with me tonight. And as usual, stay blessed and keep creating, and be safe out there, guys. Be safe out there. Stay home if you don't necessarily have to work, or you don't work in what we call the essential services. Please try to stay home and keep yourself safe. Thanks for watching, guys. Enjoy the rest of your night.